If I asked you to picture the inventors of the first computer, you'd probably see two men in a black and white photo. Ties, lab coats, standing in front of a massive machine covered in dials and cables. Their names were John Mauchly and J. Presper Eckert. The history books call them the fathers of computing. But what if I told you that photograph was cropped? Because standing just outside the frame, literally removed from the official press photos, were 6 women. Their names were Kay, Jean, Betty, Marlyn, Frances, and Ruth. And while Mauchly and Eckert built ENIAC's hardware, these 6 women did something the hardware couldn't do on its own. They taught a 30-ton machine how to think. They invented programming. From nothing, with no manual, no programming language, no one to ask. And then history erased them for half a century. To understand what these women actually achieved, we have to go back to a time when the word computer didn't mean a machine at all. It meant a person. The year is 1942. America is at war, and the U.S. Army has a massive math problem. Artillery units in the field need firing tables, thick books that tell soldiers how to aim their weapons depending on distance, wind, humidity, and a dozen other variables. Every new gun needed its own table, and every table required thousands of ballistic trajectory calculations, each one done by hand. The Army recruited mathematically gifted women to do this work. Their official job title? Computer. Hundreds of these women, human computers, sat in rows at the University of Pennsylvania's Moore School running the same calculations over and over on mechanical desktop calculators. It was tedious, painstaking work, and it was about to become obsolete. Because in a basement 1 floor below them, Mauchly and Eckert were building a machine designed to do those same calculations 1,000 times faster. ENIAC. The Electronic Numerical Integrator and Computer. 30 tons, 18,000 vacuum tubes, 1,500 relays. It consumed so much power that the lights in West Philadelphia were said to dim every time they turned it on. But here's the problem nobody talks about. When ENIAC was finished, when all those vacuum tubes were wired and the cooling system was humming, the machine was useless. It could compute, but only if someone told it exactly what to compute, step by step, wire by wire. And the people chosen for that job were 6 women pulled from the human computer pool upstairs. Betty Holberton, Jean Bartik, Kay McNulty, Marlyn Meltzer, Frances Spence, and Ruth Teitelbaum. You might be asking, why women? The answer is both simple and uncomfortable. The Army considered programming a clerical task, secretarial work like filing or typing. The real genius, they thought, was in the hardware. The men built the machine, the women could handle the paperwork. What happened next is one of the most remarkable achievements in the history of technology. Because there was no manual, no programming languages existed, literally 0. COBOL wouldn't be invented for another 13 years. Fortran was a decade away. These 6 women were handed wiring diagrams and logical block diagrams and told, figure out how to make this machine do the calculations the Army needs. They had to physically rewire ENIAC for every new program. Think about that. Not writing code, not compiling, physically crawling inside the machine, tracing cable paths, setting switches, plugging and unplugging patch cables across a machine the size of a house. And in the process of doing this, of physically rewiring a computer before the concept of software even existed, they invented the fundamental concepts we still use today. The subroutine, nested loops, breakpoints for debugging. Betty Holberton created the first sort routine. Jean Bartik and Betty Holberton together developed the methodology for programming ballistic trajectories that no one had ever programmed before. They were not clerks. They were the first software engineers in human history. And when the Army needed to demonstrate ENIAC to the press on February 15, 1946, the 6 women were the ones who programmed the demonstration. But here's where the story takes a turn. The press event was a triumph. ENIAC performed its trajectory calculation flawlessly, a problem that would have taken a human computer 40 hours, solved in 20 seconds. The reporters were stunned. The photographers snapped away. And when the photographs were developed, the 6 women weren't in them. They had been cropped out. Deliberately, because the narrative the Army and the university wanted to sell was 2 male geniuses built the machine that won the war. The women who programmed it, they were in the background, literally, framed as refrigerator ladies, a term one journalist used, models posing next to the machine, not the engineers who taught it to function. And it stuck. For 50 years, the official history of computing began with Mauchly, Eckert, and von Neumann. The 6 women who wrote the world's first programs, who invented the very concept of programming, became invisible. Jean Bartik went to apply for engineering jobs in the 1950s and was told, women don't do that kind of work. Betty Holberton's contributions to the UNIVAC and the COBOL language were credited to her male colleagues. Kay McNulty's pioneering work on subroutines was attributed elsewhere. It wasn't until 1997, more than 50 years after ENIAC, that all 6 women were inducted into the Women in Technology International Hall of Fame. Jean Bartik lived to see it, Betty Holberton lived to see it, Kay McNulty lived to see it. Marlyn Meltzer died just 3 years before. The correction is happening now. Slowly. In 2014, a filmmaker named Kathy Kleiman released The Computers, a documentary that brought the ENIAC 6 into focus for a new generation. In 2022, the U.S. Army officially recognized their contributions. Universities have started including them in computer science history courses. But ask the average person on the street to name the first programmers, and they'll still draw a blank. Here's what I think about when I think about the ENIAC 6. These women weren't just programming a computer, they were inventing what programming even meant. Every subroutine call, every nested loop, every breakpoint you set in your IDE today traces back to 6 women in a basement in Philadelphia, physically crawling through cables, figuring it out as they went. They didn't have a manual because they were the manual. Every programmer who came after them, every language, every framework, every app, every piece of software that runs your phone and your bank and your car, it all traces back to a room where 6 women taught a 30-ton machine to do math, while the world looked at the men standing next to it. The story of ENIAC isn't really about a computer. It's about who gets remembered and who doesn't. It's about which faces get framed and which get cropped out. And the thing about history is, it doesn't correct itself. It takes people digging through archives, asking uncomfortable questions, and refusing to accept the official photograph. The ENIAC programmers didn't just build the future, they built the tools that let the rest of us build everything else. And they did it knowing the credit might never come. That's not just a story about computing. That's a story about what it costs to be first. KobyLarry here. Let me know in the comments, which forgotten figure from tech history do you think deserves their own documentary? I read everyone.